We turn now to my extraordinary interview with the leader of New York's most prominent mosque, and much of it is hard to believe. A leader of New York's Muslim community refusing to admit that Islamic zealots committed the September 11th attacks. Omar Salim Abu-Namous is the new chief imam at New York's Islamic Cultural Center. His predecessor mysteriously returned to Egypt shortly after the September 11th terrorist attacks. Imam, I have to ask you this very difficult question. Your predecessor, Mr. Gamia, left his post and went to Egypt. There he said that the Jews were behind the September 11th attacks and that the Zionist air traffic controllers helped the hijackers, and the Zionist media was trying to pin it all on the Muslims. What's your reaction to that statement?
Well, my reaction is that if he actually said what is attributed to him, then he was representing himself only. He did not represent the Islamic Cultural Center of New York, nor the Muslim community here, nor even the institution to which he belongs in Egypt, Al-Azhar. He was only representing himself. That was his personal opinion.
What is your opinion, Iman, as to who caused the horror of September 11th?
Well, it was, as a matter of fact, a very deplorable, unfortunate happening, which all the Muslim world, as a matter of fact, deplored and regretted and was sad for. All the Muslim scholars in the United States of America and outside the United States, all of them unanimously regretted and denounced and condemned that atrocious attack. And the Muslim world, in fact, nobody would tolerate such an attack on civilians and innocent persons.
Well, who committed the attack, Iman? Who did it?
Well, this is not my job, as a matter of fact, to identify who did it. But we, of course, we trust the United States administration to specify and to identify the people who did it.
Well, here's an exchange that you had in an interview with the Forward newspaper. You were asked, quote, Iman Gamia, that was your predecessor, said that he thought the Jews were behind the attack and that the Zionist media was trying to cover it up. What did you think of those views? Your response, quote, his argument was that that kind of attack required technology beyond the capability of Osama bin Laden and Afghanistan. As a matter of fact, in the absence of definitive pieces of evidence, nobody can say for sure. I would not, for example, accuse any party. To be fair, I'd not accuse the Jews or the Muslims, because no definitive proof has been given that any specific quarter or authority or organization did that. You were then asked, would you rule out that the Jews did it? Your answer, that is, as a matter of fact, a question that I cannot say, that it was committed by Jews or non-Jews, because I don't have any evidence. Is that still your position, Imam?
Well, what happened was wrong and was vicious, no matter who the perpetrators were. I would not agree, for example, to the specification of any group of people and to attribute, the doing of those attacks without having the right evidence.
Okay, let me ask you this, Imam. 19 people were hijackers. They were all of background, many of them from Saudi Arabia, some of them from elsewhere in the Islamic world. They committed suicide, obviously, as part of the attack of the hijacking. They attacked the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Do you deny that they were people from the Islamic world? Those hijackers?
Well, I do not deny, but I am not, involved in the process of identifying them. So if the United States says that they came from Saudi Arabia, I would trust them, and that's it.
I see.
So,
what is there any? Let me ask you a question about your flock and your community. Is there any question in the Islamic community in New York or around the country that this was done by Islamic people? Are there a sizable number of people in your community, in your flock, your congregation, who believe that the Jews did this?
No. No, we don't believe that the Jews did it because we don't have the evidence against them. And if those people were indeed Arabs or Muslims, then they did it on their own responsibility. They represented nobody. They did not represent their peoples, did not represent their governments, did not represent Al-Islam, because Al-Islam denounces and condemns the killing of innocent people, you know, under any circumstances.
Well, it sounds to me, not to be sarcastic, Iman, but it sounds to me like you don't know whether Jews did it, Arabs did it, the Eskimos did it, the Iroquois did it. You don't know who did it the way you're talking. Is that really your state of mind right now, that you have no idea who did what happened on September 11th? Is that really your position? You have no idea who did it?
No, of course not. I am not, for example, in charge of intelligence. I am not in charge of intelligence organization or whatever. I am just a religious leader who leads prayer in the center. This is my job, and to answer religious questions of my congregation.
When you talk,
I am not a politician.
In a religious sense, murder is a crime and it's a sin. Are you preaching in your community that that if people from the Islamic background committed these horrors on September 11th, that they were wrong?
Yes, of course. We did preach that. And everybody, for 3,000 worshippers, the Friday, 2 Fridays after what happened, because the first Friday was, you know, the sermon was given by the ex-imam, and then it was my turn, and I preached to everybody that what happened was an atrocious crime, should not have happened, and it doesn't represent the Muslim world, it doesn't represent Islam, and that it did much harm to the relationship between Muslims and the Christians.
What do you make of the pattern of bin Laden's behavior in the last decade, attacking our ship, the USS Cole, blowing up 2 of our embassies in East Africa? What do you make of those actions? Because we know they're connected to bin Laden.
Well, those actions sometimes, you know, they targeted civilians, and I would not agree to the targeting of civilians, and I don't agree to this approach of dealing with problems.
What do you think of the decision by the hijackers to attack the Pentagon? Was that okay in terms of your value system? Because that's a military installation?
No, of course not. Because all of those who died in the Pentagon, they were civilians or were staff members who were not responsible for any politics or responsible for anything that, for example, bin Laden was complaining about. So how can you blame? Yes.
Let me ask you, when you watch, as I'm sure you have, Imam, and thanks for being on the show, when you watch people, you watch bin Laden in that incredible tape we all saw from in front of the cave with the 2 men with rifles, and he talked about the complaint of the Islamic people against the West, especially the United States, and he listed three things he didn't like. He didn't like the fact that we have troops stationed in the Holy Land of Mecca and Medina, in the land of Saudi Arabia. He didn't like the fact that we have sanctions, economic sanctions against Iraq, and he didn't like the fact that we take Israel's side against Palestine. Those were his words and his criticisms of us. To what extent do those criticisms reflect public opinion in the Arab American community that you preach to?
Well, those issues, I did not touch on them specifically, because they were not raised at the time when we preached to our congregations, when we preached that we should have good relationship with the Jews and with the Christians in the United States and outside the United States, because Christians, Jews and Muslims now have interwoven and interlinked interests, and so you cannot disentangle Muslim interests from Jewish or Christian interests, and the Christian body and the Muslim body are now dovetailed, so that you cannot disengage the Muslim body from the Christian body without doing harm to Muslims and to the Christians. So the only road that is open to us nowadays is to work for improved and enhanced relations, good relations between Muslims and the Christians.
All right. You said earlier, Iman, that you have great faith in the United States' ability, the government, to try to prove who did this horrible crime on September 11th. Are you encouraging the people in your flock? This is a very important question. Are you actively encouraging people in your congregation to help the FBI, to help the CIA, to help the Immigration Service, to locate the evildoers? Are you helping this effort to get to the truth by encouraging your flock to help the authorities actively?
Well, as a matter of fact, I cannot see how, for example, common people, those ordinary people, how they can help the CIA. The CIA is at a much higher level, and they have, their own means to get the news, to get intelligence, I don't see how the ordinary people, those
you mean an ordinary person who
most of them,
well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Iman, that doesn't make any sense, because in a criminal investigation, what you do is you go out and you talk to people from the community in which the suspects live. They socialize with. They eat within restaurants, perhaps Egyptian restaurants or Palestinian restaurants. They go to where the people live. And in this case, they're trying to get evidence on the people they suspect committed these crimes by going, in some cases, to the Islamic communities in this country. Are you saying that those people in those communities have nothing to offer in terms of information?
I think, you need to dig deep in order to find these people and to get the intelligence needed to discover them. So this is not within the reach of ordinary people who come for a prayer, and most of them come casually. For example, you find some worshippers today, but you don't find them tomorrow, for example. So many of them are casual,
I understand. But if anyone out there watching right now this evening has overheard anything that might help the authorities discover who committed this crime on September 11th, should those people, regardless of what community they come from, should those people help the authorities find out who did this?
Yes, I think so. They should help. They should come forward to the authorities and tell them about all the information they have.
Okay, I want to thank you, Iman, very much. I have great respect for your office and your position. I appreciate your situation.
Thank you very much.
Iman, thank you very much. Omar Salim Abu-Namous. Up next, the tracking of terrorists with NBC's Dan Abrams. You're watching Hardball.